However, they were found not to be guilty by reason of insanity. So Section 16 got them off the hook for this. And with the Supreme Court's decision behind them, the defense was able to easily convince the jury that what the boys did, they did not know that it was morally wrong.
So I'm going to just interject there and just pose a question like, how do you as a psychiatrist know the difference between your client feeding you a load of bullcrap and reality? Like, if I ever murdered somebody, I'm just going to say all this crazy stuff because maybe I can get away with it. Like, how do you know that what they're saying is what they actually believe?
I think a lot of people absolutely do that. They'll claim insanity or mental illness and they'll try to act that way. Now, there are some psychological techniques that can get to the bottom of whether somebody is being genuine. There are tests you can perform that will sometimes show that it's an act. But maybe in the early 90s, late 80s, those tactics weren't developed or weren't perfected yet.
It just seems so, I don't know, so difficult for me to say with 100% certainty that what you're saying is what you actually perceive to be reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they had to convince a jury of it. And at that point, the issue isn't innocent until proven guilty. It's sane until proven insane. So it seems that the jury believed they were insane and did not believe they were wrong here. Now, nothing's been heard about Morissette since his acquittal. I've tried every outlet I can find. I have a few online profiles that I think might be him, but nothing proves it. So by all accounts, he stayed out of trouble since this incident. Chaulk would be admitted to a mental health hospital after the second trial, but with no legal reason to hold him, they treated him, medicated him, and released Chaulk back into society after just 4 months of treatment. He would re-enter society in 1992, just over 6 years after he killed George Haywood. There were so many questions that we had about Chaulk, his upbringing, and what made him who he was that we tracked down somebody from his childhood, like we mentioned earlier. After we take a quick break, we'll talk to the all-elite wrestling superstar, Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer, rock star, actor, Ayatollah of rock and rolla, and podcaster Chris Jericho about what it was like growing up with an habitual serial killer, Rob Chaulk. We are joined by Chris Jericho. Yes, that Chris Jericho who grew up with the subject of our case today, and we wanted him to share some stories about what it was like growing up with Rob Chaulk and just what that experience is like, knowing that you grew up with somebody who killed so many people. So, Chris, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's pretty crazy. I was watching a documentary about Richard Ramirez a few months ago, and they had a quote on there that said, if you kill 3 or more people, that technically makes you a serial killer. And I started thinking like, oh my gosh, like I basically grew up with a serial killer. And I never really thought about that before until it kind of hit me just what exactly Rob Chaulk did, and the fact that, you know, I was right there at the beginning of it.
So what was this kid like growing up? Like, when did you guys meet, and like how close were you guys when you guys were growing up?
I don't really remember where we met. He's just one of those kids that was just in school, you know, just a guy that I think he was in my grade, if not a year older, but he was just in school. And we went to junior high school together in Sansom Junior High School in Winnipeg, and then we ended up in Westwood Collegiate, which is where we were going to high school when he committed his first murder. So, yeah, he was just a very strange guy. He was the type of guy that everybody knew as being strange. He was almost kind of a little bit of a bully, I guess you'd say, but he wasn't a big guy. He was probably about the same size as me, if not a little bit smaller, and I wasn't very big back then at 14 years old, which is how old we were. I think he was 15 and I was 14. And he was super into heavy metal, like the typical bands of the time, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath. He remember one time him talking about how he sacrificed a cat on Halloween, which of course, as we know, is a total early sign of a serial killer. And if it's not true, the fact he even said it at all is strange. And he also, I remember one time, shaved his head. He took up a collection at school and was talking about how crazy he'd be to shave his head. And when he shaved his head, think about this is 1984, maybe early 1985, but I think it was actually the fall of 84. Nobody had a shaved head back then, especially when you were 14 years old. So he looked like a freak, like he looked like a little skinhead freak, you know? And that kind of all fit into his vibe, or just weird Robbie Chaulk. And there's a lot more other things too, but I'm sure we'll talk more as we continue.